Well, I was admiring your flag. Is that one of your wood pieces you made?
That's a homemade.
Yeah, I love that. Is there like a secret compartment behind there, or is it just the
No, that
placard?
one's just the standard. I've had some people actually ask me for some like gun safes made with an American flag in the front. I have some design ideas I put together, but I haven't made one yet.
Nice. Yeah, I love that idea. One of these days, I will get one of those. Of course, I shouldn't tell everybody it's a gun safe. That kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, the biggest thing is some people want them like a clamshell where they open like this. Some people want them to slide to the side. Some people want them to slide down.
Yeah.
Everybody wants something unique, which, I mean, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So make some products around it.
What else do you make with the wood? Like it's all just custom. So it's whatever anybody wants with wood. That's what you can make them.
Pretty much. So like my small little slogan is I turn wood into beautiful things.
Oh, nice.
So I'm sitting at a 7-foot long, 4-foot wide black walnut waterfall desk here in my office that I made for myself. And it was the first time I ever made a waterfall desk. If anybody doesn't know what a waterfall desk is, basically it's where the grain, where you take a board, right, and you cut a 45 this way, and then you cut the opposing 45 the other way, and then you basically turn the board down so it looks like a waterfall. So the grain is actually in the same flow through the pattern. And that was the first time I ever did it. And to cut across 48 inches, 4 feet, keeping it straight, keeping it nice is one thing, but then to do the exact opposite cut on the other piece, if that gets screwed up, you're never going to mate properly. So
wow,
that's it was a little nerve-wracking the first time, but it was fun.
Nice. And you said black walnut, so is it black?
So black walnut is really, when you look at the wood, it's got a really dark, rich section to it, and then it's really light. But I actually stained it to with a pure something called Rubio monocoat, which is not just a stain, it's a stain and a sealer. So it turned out like a brownish orange, dark brown kind of color. So it's really, really nice.
Awesome. Probably I'm going to make you like tilt your camera down at some point before we're done so I can just see it. There we go. Dang, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's hard to see the black walnut live edge from the other side. I'd have to take the camera around, but yeah.
Nice.
So flags was like the main project. It's funny how it started. So this was like in COVID. My mother was home with my dad and so forth, and they had decided to actually get their house redone. And they're like, oh, it'll be cool, a couple of months will be good. Then COVID came around, and then it was like 4.5 months. They couldn't go to restaurants, so like they're making all this food in the microwave at the home and all that stuff, and I would drop food off for them from my house, but where I could. But my mom had this old like pallet that was converted and painted into a flag, like a lot of people have in their homes, and this thing was probably 10 years old. So some of the screws were out. It was it looked sad, right? So she's like, I really want to make a new one of these. So I was going to end up just cutting all the stripes for her and the union and just send it to her to kind of work on something for a project. And then I was like, well, I wonder, what I can do a little different. So then not just the stripes being cut, they also have a little bevel on the edges. So each stripe kind of has like a little bit of texture to it when you look at it. And then I was looking more and more things up, and I was like, oh, people burn them to bring the texture out, and then they stain them. So I was like, I'm just going to make them one for when they open the house back up. So I ended up making her the first flag, and it was awesome. I remember sitting there in front of this thing at the table. I'm like, I don't want to give this thing away.
Yeah.
Like I want to keep it. So in my head, I'm like, other people are probably going to want these things too. So it turned out to just open up into a business. And this is probably the main project I work on. And then I'll take on other projects that I either one have the time for and the equipment to do. If not, there's 3 or 4 people locally, here in New Jersey and up and down the East Coast that I know that do some amazing, amazing projects.
Dang. So this is just a side hustle for you, just something fun you like creating.
It's a monetized hobby. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. I became obsessed with, and I had somebody make me, how where they take the battery connectors and like zap the wood, and it creates all these like natural rivers, and then they fill it with like this colored resin. Yeah, I had a cutting board made with that. It's so cool. I love it.
And each one is individual. I mean, all this stuff with wood is individually unique, but that really adds to it. I want to do one of those one day, but again, time, that's business number 4 for me. So I don't have all the amount of time that I want to invest in that right now. But eventually, once this business, the furnace company, kind of gets up and running with a little bit more, self-control, let's say, then I'm going to put some time into the wood shop.
Awesome. So that is your main business, the furnace company, correct?
Yeah.
And you're moving it from
go ahead.
Where's you're moving from? You're moving it from.
So we're in Jersey right now,
Yeah.
and we're moving down to North Carolina,
Wow. That's a big
south of
one.
Charlotte. And we got all our furniture installed last week. I was down there with our HR manager and finance manager, and we were just kind of setting everything up. My parents came down. My dad, who started this business 54 years ago,
Wow.
he saw the pad, so the cement area where we were gonna, join in a building that we're renting a part out of.
Mm-hmm.
But this time he came down, he actually got to see not just the office space being done, but all the, the shop area and what we're doing back there. And my dad's one of those guys. So he was born in 1941, moved to the Black Forest with his brothers and sisters instantly, had no knowledge of his parents, right? He was out there with the nanny and so forth. So at 7, he met his parents the first time. At 14, his dad died. His mom was a businesswoman at heart, so she was never really around and always working hard and kind of like showing what it takes to work hard and all that stuff. But there wasn't a lot of family time around with like parental figures. So he didn't have a lot of people around him, as parents being like, I'm proud of you. You're doing so well. I mean, this was also 1940s, 1950s Germany, where things were a little colder and just a different world, right?
They didn't raise kids that way back then.
Exactly. So, when he comes to me and he gives me an attaboy, or I'm really proud of you, or dude, this is really impressive. Like, I know it comes from a place where he really means it, because he didn't have it in his life so much. He didn't really come out and do that often.
Yeah.
Not to say he didn't, come up and say he was proud of me when I was growing up, but because of just who he is and what he's done, when he says it, it means something a little extra for me. So he walked around that shop and he's like, Stefan, this is incredibly impressive. Like, I'm really, really, really proud of you. And I was just, pulling the heartstrings a little bit.
That had to be incredibly touching.
Yeah. It was amazing, because I know, he's going to stay up here. My mom's going to stay up here. My sister lives up here in Jersey. She's an incredible animal trainer, dog trainer in this area, and pretty much is dominating like the whole Northeast coast area. From people come from all over the place to see her and her business partner. But, until either, I don't know, maybe one day I decide that, having kids is the right, well, not that I don't want to have kids. It's just, I got to find all the right parts of the puzzle to make that happen.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true, one way or the
other. My mom dyingly wants to become a grandmother and all that stuff. So hopefully one day that I can fulfill that wish for her. And, by then maybe they'll have a place down there in Charlotte and a place up here to see my sister and stuff. So
how far of a distance is that from Charlotte to Jersey? Like, is that a plane ride? Is it a car ride?
They're about a 10-hour car ride and about an hour and a half plane ride.
Okay. Yeah. Not just a casual drive.
No, no, not an easy one. A lot of the guys that actually from our team have decided to go down there via car, because they either don't want to fly, or they just wanted to get a feel for what the drive was like and so forth. But most of the people that did it, they love the drive, like going through Virginia and down through the northern part of Carolina and all that stuff. Apparently the drive's really, really nice. So I'm excited to do that. Haven't done it yet.
Awesome. How do you pronounce your last name?
Ooh, that's a good one. For 41 years of my life, I've been spelling my last name for people. So it looks like Joens.
Yes.
It's German. So German J is pronounced like a Y, and the OE is actually like an O with 2 dots over the top of it. So the actual German pronunciation is Joens. But the way I try to, let's say, help the people that don't have like a little bit of a European tongue, because that's kind of what it takes to get there, is it's like you're yearning for something where there's just a soft R, right? So Joens is the easiest way to say
Yearns.
There you go.
I get that right? Yearns.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I knew that I was slaughtering it. There was no way I was going to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah. It's everybody. Everybody's always like, and they also like when I go places and I like order some food and they want to put my name in because I got a membership, I'm like Joens, right? And I see them starting to type and it's JON. Like, it's just so ingrained in people's brains to do the N first. So yeah, it's been an interesting time.
Yeah, people are like that with my last name. They just dislike Manson so much. It's always Mason. Mason. They will not put that N in there. And so I'm like, no, there's actually the N. I get it. We don't like it either, but it is what it is.
Yeah, usually when I run by somebody I know I'll never see again, or like you're at a restaurant or something like that, and they need a name for the order, I just say Steve Jones.
Yeah. Just keep it simple. Who cares?
Keep it simple. That's the alias.
Yeah. Love that. So you're an OG of the Arete plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much has it changed since you've been part of that? And when was the origination of Arete?
So it's probably rounding 5 years now.
Okay.
So Arete, when they started out, if you go back and ask any of the guys that have been around the beginning, so I was following Andy and Ed, on podcasts like everybody else was, and a buddy of mine actually, who was in Arete for, I'd say 3.5 years, and then he went out and got his own business coach specific to his industry. We were sitting there that day before enrollment was there, and we're like, dude, do we do this? Do we spend the money for this? Like, yeah, okay, Andy and Ed are cool, but we don't know what they're going to do. Like, you don't know what's coming from it.
Yeah.
So like in the pure mentality of like an entrepreneur or someone who's kind of going out and trying to start something new, you got to go out there and just take a leap of faith sometimes in what you believe in. So when we all applied for Arete, I think Andy and Ed were thinking, okay, there's probably going to be like, 500 to 1,000 people that apply, and we're going to start this out with 100 people. Because the intention was initially it was a big entry fee for the year, but there were 3 summits you would go to and then all these calls throughout the year. That's the way the first 2 years of what the Arete Syndicate was started out. But they got almost like 10,000 applicants or something like that.
Wow.
That's at least the numbers that they threw out. So it's probably like 8,700, right? Just round up. Let's see what nicer. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a lot. Yeah. So what they realized is that they had so many people that were interested in this. They couldn't just narrow it down to like 100 people. They have to and they created the Arete Accelerator Program. So the Accelerator Program turned out to be like, I think it was 1,200 people to start or something like that. And basically the Accelerator Program was a smaller monthly fee because you get 3 calls a month. And every year there's an open invite to one event, and it was a live event in the beginning. And the summits did you go to the summit in May last year?
Mm-hmm.
So they would do that for the syndicate group, and it was 3 times a year.
That's pretty nice.
Some of the photos you might have seen some guys holding axes when they gifted it to them and they completed the first year and all that. Dang. That was going through that whole program, and it was a completely different dollar amount, to invest into it. And I think what they realized is that they were repeating a lot of the same messaging to people, just in more depth at the syndicate level. Yeah. So they combined both groups in year 3, and then everybody gets the same calls, and then the summits are invite only, and they're at a higher premium when you go to those events.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of the OGs didn't enjoy that like new format. They enjoyed having their smaller, more elite kind of group. And so when it became more broad and mass, there was some that didn't like it. But I love it.
Yeah, there's a couple people who moved up from the Accelerator group to the Syndicate group in year 2. It was cool to see. I mean, exclusivity it's an awesome thing when you get into that level of group, but there's no reason not to try to include the whole family that is Arete. So I like the idea that everybody's kind of still together in terms of the general community. And if you want to, like, if the summit is something that is kind of like tailored towards your specific area that you're trying to learn in, you should have an opportunity to go there. That could mean the next thing for you to level your business up, where you can get into that level in group. So I kind of like the move. I think it was a smart one. I know some of the OGs, they get together and they do their own thing, but there's no reason they can't, as the syndicate, get together and do their own group events outside, just like every region kind of does their own Arete event.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's pretty special about Arete because they have no bars on any of it. So like, I know Javon has like his like young entrepreneur group that's to the side, but it's under Arete. And then like you said, all the regional stuff, and they don't try to control it whatsoever. They're just like, great, this is what you guys should be doing, take the ball and run, even evolve. Again, it's not like official Arete, but it's the same people. And I just think it's awesome that they don't try to stranglehold that or monetize that or stop that in any way. Cause I've seen that in other entrepreneur groups where they try to like eliminate other groups. And it's like, no, it's part of the power. I love it.
Well, if you look at a lot of the side groups that I've at least seen take place, none of them are doing this for their own monetary benefit. They're doing it for the betterment of the community and the group and the people that get involved in it. So, I know the first Evolve event, whatever extra dollars were made on the event went to charity events. So I know there's talk about what the vision is for the next, version of Evolve, and, trying to look at sponsorships for kids to go through entrepreneurship schools and stuff like that. So I think it's great. I think it's, all the things that are going to spur out of what these early stages are for what the next 5 and 10 years are I think it's going to be awesome. But I think in other groups where when you offshoot, they look at it as you might take money from them if you're trying to earn money from it. So, I
Right.
mean, I understand the principle of trying to shut things down, but when it's for the greater good, I think it's the right move. Let it
Well,
go, let it flourish.
and that's the whole thing, is to change the world. And sometimes you can't do it yourself. So I think that overlying purpose is what's going to make this thing just continue to spread and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I love that about Arete and Andy and Ed, of course.
Yeah, I don't know what your first day was like, but I remember signing up and my buddy Travis and I had like a side text going on. It's like, dude, did you get all these extra Facebook messages today? And then it just snowballed and snowballed. And when you first get in, you're like, I got to pay attention to the Facebook group. I got to pay
Yeah.
attention to all these messages. I got to help. I got to contribute. It's like, holy crap, that's like a whole nother job by itself. And we're both just like, stop. You don't need to do that. There's going to be 100,000 messages, throughout every month. There's no way you can keep tabs on that. So contribute where you can, help where you can, work and build those relationships. And that's, for me, it took me almost 2 years to like find a little bit of a community there, because I came in as a manufacturer, and manufacturing was kind of light in the group in the beginning. It's a lot bigger now, but there's guys that came in the fitness world, people that came into the finance world or the insurance world or whatnot. And like most groups, when you get together that are business driven, it's okay, how can we support each other from a business growth point of view, right? So there's a little bit of that goes on, but for me, I kind of got to see it through a different set of lenses. I got to see it as like, what are the things that I've learned in terms of running a business, and what are the things that I can gain and learn about running my current business better than I've ever done? And those are the areas for me that I've learned the most in, because I'm not going to find a customer to spend $800,000 on a piece of equipment unless they're in manufacturing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to look at it through a different set of lenses, and it was a lot of fun. It was really cool to be able to kind of navigate that little path. And I find I have a little community now of people that I call, really, really good friends, and people that I've met. And even with yourself, the last time we kind of linked up and got to know each other, we have a much better connection and understanding of who we are. And I just look at the way I view the group much better in the last couple of years than I did the first 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think you have an obscure business, like there's nobody else in our industry, or well, maybe there's one or two people like running drug rehab. So I definitely had to do exactly like you said with everything, even with Andy and Ed say, just put on a different lens and get the message and how it can apply to my business. But definitely it's been the connections and the community and that sort of the camaraderie that we get from that, which has been just huge for me. I can't imagine not having Arete in my life, honestly.
Truth.
Yeah, and the podcast helps. Like that gets a lot of people. Like I get to meet with people like you, other entrepreneurs that are in totally different fields, but we can all relate on one thing, which is our entrepreneurship and wanting to help people.
Yeah, it's funny. I was sitting there thinking yesterday, I was like, okay, we're going to get together today and we're going to chat about a whole bunch of cool stuff. And I was trying to find the link because a lot of people, when they bring them on their podcast, they try to find a link specific to what they're doing. For example, Tom Caravella, I was on his podcast, but I was talking more about, the conversational side of business and business operations and education around sales and so forth. And, finding that connection to his audience away from what I'm doing from a technical perspective, but there's always ways to find this correlation. So I was thinking a little bit about you and about what you do and how you like to help people. And really the mission is to find a way to build a bridge to somebody and communicate with them in the language that they need to have. Right. Yeah. And how do you do that for them so that they have a way to walk back? Because maybe they're struggling. Maybe they don't know what it takes to get it done. You might have been through that path, or you have people on your team that have done it. So put all the effort in getting all the way over there just to help walk them back over here, because this is the place that we know they should be.
Yeah.
And I find I have a correlation like that sometimes with some of my teammates here where, maybe in 4 years, I know that they're going to take a new role in the business, or I know that this is what I'm trying to groom them for. I need to get them all the way to that spot and show them every single light, on the bridge so that they can walk the whole path back eventually and get there. So there's correlations to it all the time.
Yeah, well, and that's just being a good leader too. A lot of it is observing and just picking up on things and communicating, like not letting stuff fester, like, let's talk about this. Why is this a block, or where is it going? And that's what I do. That's why a lot of people are like, well, do you actually go into your office? I'm like, yeah, I put eyes on my clients, eyes on my staff, like, because I can just visually see and understand what's going on so that I can best help. I'm not going to run things from an ivory tower, just like you go to your warehouse. Like, you're not going to just sit in your office over here and expect just to be fed information. You like to get in there and like, let me really see how things are going.
I also go stir crazy in an office. So I'll go in the
Oh,
back, grab a wrench and start turning some wrenches with the guys. One, for two reasons. One,
yeah.
it satisfies my need to get out of the office. And two, it helps me build a bond with the guys on the shop floor.
See, that's
Right.
perfect. And that's me. That's why, I do CrossFit up at the center, or I run the fitness comp or that sort of stuff. Same thing. You build that camaraderie, and then it becomes more than just like there's that boss, that we don't know or ever talk to. It's just like you're part of the same group, which I think is really important for running a business.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a hierarchy to an organization when things like decisions and so forth have to be made. But from a day-to-day operation, I want everybody here to feel like we're always together. We're all working on the same team. We're all, everybody has roles and responsibilities, just like a sports team would, like a goalkeeper versus a forward in soccer, or a wide receiver versus a quarterback. Everybody's got a specific skill set that they're good at. But as a whole, we can play the game. As an individual, you'll never win.
Yeah.
So it's
100%.
always trying to find and bring that message back to the team too. That's one of the things that I've really enjoyed in the last few years of being, more in running this organization versus running departments of the organization. That's been a lot of fun for me.
That's awesome. Do you remember how aggressive I came out at you? Like, so why are you going to be a guide? And you're like, dude, whoa. And it was really coming from a place of like, Angela wants you to be a guide. So what is your backstory to create you being that kind of leader? It was more just a funny way to intro that, but I realized sometimes I come off a little direct and aggressive.
I see you like to use a sledgehammer to break the ice instead of drilling the first hole. It's cool.
Sometimes that happens, yes. And then a lot of people respond, and a lot of people are like, "Holy shit!"
I like when things are outside the norm a little bit. So I've been one of those people that like the uncertainty world, or when things are just kind of helter skelter. I, for some reason, can tap into this little spot in my head that says, "All right, stop, look around real quick, assess the situation, and then start making a move forward," versus like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself, and kind of like running all over the place,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you coming up and you're like, so what makes you think you're going to be a guide? I'm like, this person doesn't even know me, but okay, stop. I can either go down the path of bringing the same energy back, or I could say, well, how about we get to know each other a little bit, and hopefully I get a chance to answer that question. So that was fun for me.
Yeah. Well, just so everyone knows, a guide is at the Evolve event, there was different entrepreneurs that were sort of leading different groups. And so for me, it was more coming out of a place of curiosity, like, why would you be a guide? But I realized the way I framed it was pretty aggressive. So thank you for not reacting poorly.
No worries. It's fun. I sit there and that's actually a really good question, because it's made me think a lot. Not just from that moment forward, but also in previous moments when Angela even asked me the first time. I was kind of like, it's amazing when you run an organization or you run an operation. There's two types of people in the world. There's the world of people that are like overly inflated in their self-confidence and ego and everything. It's like, I'm the greatest person since sliced bread. It's like, then you got the other people who are doing some really amazing things, but they don't feel like they've ever achieved or are qualified or have these moments. I kind of feel like I'm over here sometimes, where when I actually look back and I look at the lives that I've impacted, I've looked at, the help that I've been able to do, the customer base that we've been able to grow, the knowledge that we've shared with these people, and just the turmoil of things we've gone through here as an organization and the challenges I've faced along the way of being a leader. There's a lot of stuff I can share some information on, but in any given moment, there's times where I'm like, well, I don't know that I'm ready to do that.
Yeah.
But I've never been ready to do that in all the ways I've moved myself through this business, taking on management roles that I've not specifically trained for, right? But I know people need answers, they need prioritization, and they need someone just to act and behave like a leader and a quarterback for them. And I've done that throughout my whole entire life, from back in the day when I was a kid playing on sports team and being a captain on the teams. I've been the guy that people have come to get a question answered. I've been the guy to pump up and motivate, or whatever it is. So any moment that I can get and put myself into those shoes, I love it. Even if I don't know what I'm doing, I'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll figure this out.
Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. What do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when she asked me that, I was like, what the hell do I have to offer? And then I sat back and I do this, like, this is probably a good topic to talk about. So a lot of people always talk about work-life balance, right?
They do.
I don't know how often that question comes up in your world. I remember when I worked, before I came back to the family business, I worked in finance for a little while. And there was this guy as a financial planner. He was the top guy, right? Dude wrote over $1 million in commissions every year and like really, really did well. And somebody asked him a question that he put a pin in and he was going to answer later. And the question was, how did you manage your work-life balance? Mm-hmm. Put a pin in it, right? And then at the end of the session, he comes back and he goes, let me take the pin out of this and let's address this. He goes, if I were to go back over the last 7, 8 years, I probably would have focused a little bit more on my life and my work and try to find a balance to it. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, but you wouldn't have been able to do what you did if you were trying to balance your whole life the whole time. And people ask me this all the time. And whenever I hear it, I kind of laugh because there is no work-life balance. Like, you can have a moment in your time, like if you schedule it for yourself. I try to do it at least once a month. I step back and I say, okay, how are things going in work and in life, right? If I'm for the last 3 weeks been pouring into work and my life is not having the balance that it needs to technically have at that point, there's no moment where you're perfectly balanced, but it's stepping back and recognizes I need to give myself a little bit of time over the next month or some time in the next 6 months. I need to do a little something for me, right?
Yeah.
And most people, they think the problem with thinking about work-life balance is when you're at work and you're thinking about home, you're not fully dedicated. And when you're at home and you're thinking about work, you're not fully dedicated. So I always tell people, stop thinking about balance and think about presence. Be present in that moment. Yeah, you'll get back home, right? But when you're at work, be at work. Unless you get that call, like somebody's injured, you got to run to a hospital, there's a major issue, like that should be the thing that takes you away from work. But the issues or things you're dealing with, like if they stray into the work situation, you're not fully focused here and you're not fully present. So for me, it's all about presence. And then every so often stepping back with the bird's eye view and being like, all right, things are starting to trend a little bit more. I'm spending way too much time in my personal life and I'm going to see work is going to start to suffer for that. So I need to redirect efforts, right?
Yeah.
But it's always about being present.
I love that. I mean, I know I've struggled with that over the years. You know, I've even said to my kids, I'm sorry, I worked your whole like upbringing. And they're like, dude, but you were always there. You were at every game, you were at every play. You made it work. I mean, you worked long hours, you were gone a lot, but at the same time, when it counted, you were always there. So they've helped me sort of feel okay with that. Cause I think as a working parent, you always have this guilt over spending too much time at the office or too much time with the kids and something's going to suffer. So it is a very tricky thing to feel good about both. And I think a lot of time we just got to give ourselves grace too, because I think we're overly harsh on ourselves and our expectations of ourselves for sure.
Yeah. My dad worked his ass off too. The dude traveled like, I mean, I'm doing his travel schedule right now, which is crazy. Like every other week.
You travel a lot.
Yeah, it's
nuts.
Lot. But when I look back, you know, my dad always was the guy that won the, you know, the loudspeaker award when we was a kid playing soccer. Right. Yeah. So he would get the cone at the end of the year with everybody signing it because he was the loudest dude at the soccer field. So he didn't make it to all the practices and a couple of games he might not have made it to, but he was there for the bulk of it. He was there for most of the things that mattered. And when you look back, it's like, yeah, okay, he did this. He was there for all these things, but he also look at all the stuff he did from a business perspective. He helped the family grow. He helped the family, you know, accumulate another home or this or that or something along the way because he worked his ass off. You know, and that's the truth is you're seeing those things as a kid that kids never tell the parents. It's like, oh, great job on this, you know, business deal you did, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Well, like you said, it's all about presence. Like I've noticed that so much lately. Like people will go to things like this retreat I just went to, and we had no power for like the first 3 days. Like Costa Rica had the biggest storm they've seen in 20 years. And of course I've come in right at that time. And so we're up in this like jungle retreat, no power. They had a generator for the food and whatnot. Right. And it was great because we all just sort of talked, we bonded, we were fully present with each other. Nobody had internet, nobody had phones. It was really cool. But the second the power came on and everybody got Wi-Fi, it was like you just saw like the presence dissipate because now all of a sudden we're being ruled by this and not fully present, and the beeps are going off and this and that, and people, you know, if things aren't going right, they immediately just like sort of lose themselves. And they 100%, and not everybody, and it wasn't all the time, but you could see such a significant shift in presence once that happened.
Yeah, I do. When you can actually see it taking place like that, it's like, there's nothing more powerful.
Yeah.
Like that is such a great example for anybody who ever wants to know, like, how does presence actually, this is huge. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Shut the power off with your family at home, right?
Yeah.
Intentionally. And everything goes down. See how the family starts to connect and bond. It's all the things you've always wanted to happen. And then miraculously go turn the power back on and see where people's priorities lie.
Yeah. I love that.
That's an amazing test.
It is. Well, and it's so funny. The guy who runs a retreat, owns and runs it, Jake, he's had it for over 5 years. He was like, I think going forward, I'm going to purposely cut this shit. Like he actually had that idea, just seeing in us the difference, because they've never lost power that long there. So they've never actually been able to witness it. And he's like, or I'm going to switch the Wi-Fi off on at certain points, or, you know, it gave him that exact idea of how to run future retreats to sort of force that presence when people, given the option, will just go to what's comfortable, which is their phone, the distraction, you know, the comfortable, not being uncomfortable.
Wow. We just unearthed a really good idea.
Yeah. Let's just, you know, maybe those rolling blackouts are a good idea every now and then.
It's funny. Like, you know, think about it. You were just at an airport, right? And that's probably one of the areas in most people's lives where they get the most tense, right? Because one, it's the fear of them being on a plane for some people. Like I love being on planes. I don't mind it at all. Right. Glad, because I travel so much, I'd fucking lose myself if I was stressed out about it.
That'd be terrible.
But like, if a plane gets delayed for a mechanical, or weather, or whatever issue, it's amazing one of my favorite things in life is people watching. Airport has some of the best people watching, because you get to see how people manage stressful situations. It's almost like we need to figure out how to make that part of an interview for new employees, right?
Yes.
Kind of like they do with the restaurant situation, where like they intentionally screw up somebody's order. But like when you're sitting there and the pilot's not there, right? Or the stewardess or whatever, something's not going the way you want it to. The amount of people that lose their shit and every 5 minutes go up to the counter, it's like something's miraculously just going to change. If those people understood presence and understood that there's nothing you can do about that moment right now, like you can either let yourself get stressed out, or you can just sit there and figure out, repurpose your time towards something that might move a needle for you while this is being worked on. So unless you have your pilot's license and you work for the airline, you ain't going to fly the plane and ain't going to take off any faster than you wanted to.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I was watching some people who'd been in that airport for 2 days. One person who had shit rescheduled every hour for 12 straight hours. She was like literally yelling at people like, why are you running? What's the point? You're just going to, and I'm like, wow, she's being super aggressive about this. But for me, besides like repurposing and just being present, not being upset, I'm always like, ooh, what am I supposed to get out of this little bit of adversity? Is there a reason I'm supposed to be on a later flight? Is there a reason I'm supposed to do this? So I try to look at like the hindsight, but yet in the moment of why is this happening, so that I'm not like affected by whatever craziness is occurring.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of something called the 3-bucket theory?
No.
Okay, so this is something I learned back in finance. I learned a lot when I worked for Ameriprise, which was American Express originally, but something called the 3-bucket theory. And there's a bucket of control, a bucket of influence, and a bucket of no control or influence. And bucket 1 is the bucket of control. And there's only one thing that's in that bucket. Do you know what that might be?
Control. I wanted to say body right there, but
yeah, your body, it's you.
Okay.
You're the only thing that you can control in this whole entire world is just you. And even then, it's still sometimes hard, right?
Yeah.
Then you got bucket of influence. So a bucket of influence is things you have influence over. So for example, for you, we can have a conversation. I can ask you to get up and do 10 jumping jacks. I can incentivize you to do it, but it's your control to make the decision to do it. I can influence you, monetizing, incentivizing, all these things. I can try to help the situation go the way I want it to, but I can't control it because I can only influence. And then the last one is things I can't either influence or control. Like if it's going to rain today, I can't control that, right? Yep. Unless like your Vail ski resorts and you figured out how to put more moisture in the clouds or something like that. But that's the only way to do it. Yeah. So what I've realized when I learned this early on, I've used this 3-bucket theory almost daily in my life over the last 4 or 5 years. But it comes up so often throughout my world. And the power of it is when you recognize the difference between the control and the influence bucket. For example, a plane situation, you can only influence a plane situation. Like if they're down a stewardess and you persuaded another stewardess to come over and take a shift, you might be able to help, but you can't control it.
Yeah.
So in personal life, it's a lot of the same things too. It's like if you're going into a conversation that's hard, be that with someone in your profession where you're trying to help someone understand the change in life that they need to make, it's their decision to make it. It's your level of influence that you have over it. So if you walk into that thing knowing the decision's going to be one way or the other, if I can't control it, but if I give my best effort to try to make the decision go one way, you can walk out knowing you did your part. But if it didn't end the way you wanted to, it doesn't mean you should be disappointed. It doesn't mean you need to beat yourself up because you did everything you could to try to help that situation take place. So if you can truly delineate between control and influence before going into an activity, a decision, a conversation, it allows you to not put so much weight on the outcome and you put more weight on what your input variables are. And I've used that throughout my life in so many ways, like I said, at airports or hard conversations with employees or anything along those lines. So it's a really, really good tool to use. And it's one of those things like the human needs categories, right? Once you start picking up on those and you can see that quickly in a situation, it allows you to adapt to that conversation a lot faster. The same thing with this 3-bucket theory. Like, you know, if you have the ability to, when someone comes to you abruptly, to know how to address yourself in that conversation, it makes life really, I don't want to say it makes it easier, but it makes you know that you put a line between what you can control and what you can't control.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the things we teach in the program, because with addiction, you know, there's loss of control. And then the first thing you do is you want to control. And so we try to teach radical acceptance. It's like, it is what it is. You know, you can try to influence it. You could try to change it, but it might just suck. And it is what it is. And you just got to like accept it if you cannot do either the first two.
Right. And you're in that spot. So be present there. It's like, you know, I think about this a lot for, you know, myself, because I've lost some people along the way, friends, family members, and so forth. But when I'm on the other side and having a conversation with someone who's going through a hard time, that they have to go through it, like a mourning event or like something that's really challenging, it's like, you got to recognize you're in the middle of the woods right now, right?
Yeah.
The only way through this woods to that side is through the woods. So if you're mourning, you're going to cry. You're going to be sad. You're going to be all these things. When you're there, just let it happen. Don't try to change it, because trying to change it makes it worse. Just be there.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll find your way through those woods. The only way out is through. That's a line I like to use a lot.
It's a great line. And I love that. And you're right. When you're in the middle of it, you don't have like the advantage of seeing hindsight and going, oh God, I wish I wouldn't have been so tough on myself, because of course the good thing was coming. But when you're in the middle of it, you think it's going to be like that for forever. And it's very difficult to just allow yourself to be in the process, because you're like, am I just succumbing to my life sucking for the rest of my life? It's like, well, maybe it will, but you just got to go through it. You got to feel it and you got to let the process happen.
Yeah, I'm intrigued actually, you know, in someone like yourself who's having some of these really hard conversations with someone. How do you, like, for people, obviously the best way to, you know, be a coach for someone is to be someone who's been in the situation, but how do you qualify someone to be the shepherd of that person, right? How do you qualify someone to take on the role to be the guide for someone who's going through a hard time? What do you look for in people like that?
Well, for me, like 95% of my staff have been through the program, and they've been through overcoming addiction. So that just by nature kind of gives them all they need in order to help somebody else, because they've been there, they've done that, they've done the work, they've seen the progress and the results on the other side. They're applying the tools every day. So for me, like you just nailed it. It's, have you been there? And it don't mean like you got your education from books, because that's the thing the clients love about us the most is you all didn't get your education, you know, your degrees, and you think you're an expert in an area that you have no understanding. You guys have like a PhD in addiction because you've all been there yourself. And so I think that's like your biggest thing to be a shepherd, is having been through it and done the work and seeing the good results on the other side. So like a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's amazing, because now you can be more empathetic and understanding of their situation when you're dealing with them. It's like, We can, but we can also hold them a lot harder and a lot higher standard because we've been there and we've done the work. And coddling and empathizing people for having created an addiction in their life isn't going to get them well. It's holding them accountable and responsible and being there for them and holding space, but then also pushing them to do the work to overcome it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I've had a couple friends that have had some depression and mental health issues. They've gone through a lot, and I've always tried to figure out how to properly position myself for them, because it's not an easy place to be, especially, I mean, I think every walking human has been depressed at some point in time in their life. It's just the gravity of that depression, right?
Yeah.
And I've always felt like people that are in those places, like when they're, when you notice that they're not in a good spot, or you're trying to text them to come out and hang out, like there's been sometimes I'd either go over to their house and just sit with them, even if we sat and didn't do anything for hours, or I would just try to get them to come out, even if it was just over to my house, kind of thing, versus like out to a bigger crowd, because it's usually in the bigger crowd that it gets a little bit more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But just trying to find that way of connection, and it's not easy. Like, I'm curious, like, do you have any tips or practices for people that are in, I know you're dealing with people a little bit more on an addiction side of life, versus just a straight up mental health, but I'm sure you've helped some people in that area too. What would you say are some of your best practices in helping someone that's going through some mental health issues?
Oh, several. I mean, first, I always check diet and exercise. Is this being artificially created because you're not eating well and you're not moving your body? 99% of the time, that is what it is. So I'll try to get them motivated in those areas. I'm like you, I'm a problem solver. So I'm like, tell me, I can come up with your solutions. But like, I know in recent times, like for me and these different groups I've been a part of, just holding space, and you just hit it so beautifully. Just holding space for someone, just being there for them, letting them process in their time, talk when they want to talk. Sometimes we can incite some leading questions and that's how my programs run. We're not like, this is your problem. It's more like asking questions that help them figure out what is behind what they're going through. I think that's the other thing I like to do, is just ask questions so that they figure it out for themselves, because then it's real. Like if you're trying to impose what you think their problem is, it's the majority of the time it's not going to really set in. It makes sense, but it's like, yeah, that might be for you, but that's not for me. But if we can set them up with leading questions where they have that realization themselves, then they can be causative over it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that approach, and I love those answers, and I love what you said. It's crazy. Like I know there's a bunch of people, especially in Arete specifically, that are trying to do things to help with mental health and the awareness around it. But I think the biggest challenge this world has right now is it's met with like contention and disdain when someone says that they have mental health issues, where it should be met with love and a hug. You know what I mean?
What a beautiful saying that is. Love and a hug.
Just love and a hug, because I mean that's what most people need when they're in a bad spot. And not everybody likes hugs and all that stuff, and there's certainly people that don't like to be touched, but just like that, just outpouring of I'm there for you. You know what I mean? And even if we're never getting together, just know that I'm here for you, kind of scenario. That's the world needs to open itself up to that more. And I feel like it's not going to solve the problem, but at least it's going to allow the stigma around it to change to some degree. That's the thing. I think that's the worst thing. It's like, oh, you're depressed, get over your shit. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because you're an Arete, and that's kind of like, the hard viewpoint. But I think the rest of the world is almost swung hard in the other direction, where everybody has a mental illness. This is wrong with me, that, all these labels, all this stuff that, I should just medicate because I have this condition. And I think like a lot of the world has almost swung too far in that direction, where they're leaning into owning like labels as opposed to getting causative over being happy. You're right. I mean, I think it's on both sides. I think we see it on both sides.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I think do you think people like search for a label that they want to be able to put on themselves at times, and they almost create something that's not even there?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, watch TV, anything you're feeling, you can have a condition for in 2 seconds flat. You could tell your doctor and you could have that diagnosis and medication within a day. Absolutely.
It's absolutely wild. And it makes me really, I mean, obviously there's been plenty of talk around what's going on in the world and how there's messages and control and all those things going on. But like, what's it going to take for people just to realize that, just stop and think about you for a hot minute? Like, have the conversation with yourself versus like just letting your self-talk kind of run off by itself. It's like everybody always talks to themselves, but like that's actually probably a better way to say it. Instead of talking to yourself, have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole self-awareness thing though, like in realizing, how do I talk to myself? Like I know for myself, I didn't even realize the negative self-talk I was doing until I said something out loud and someone was like, wait, would you say that to your best friend? Like, or anybody? Like, that's kind of effed up that you would talk to yourself that way. And I didn't even realize this negative self-talk was occurring. So I think the first step is becoming self-aware of the self-talk.
Yeah, for sure. There was, do you know Jamie Jaenia? She's in Arete.
I don't think so.
So she's a coach at this point in time. She's all about helping people kind of access, themselves and getting a really good understanding of their own self-awareness. And she was recently at an event that I was at out in at Josh Kosnick's place out in the Midwest in Wisconsin. And she talks a lot about how to ask herself questions, right? So I was intrigued because I try to do a good job of that, of, why did this happen? Why did we get here? And I said, well, what happens when you get to a point where you don't know what questions to ask yourself anymore? She said, well, ask yourself the question of why you're stuck on asking yourself questions. What's causing you to have the block to it? And I think that there's a lot of truth to that in terms of like, in that conversation you have with yourself, I feel like a lot of people are fearful to just talk with themselves. Like, I've done it a few times. It doesn't always work out the way, but hopefully with more practice I'll get better. But like, I'll sit in front of the mirror and try to have a conversation with myself.
Yeah.
Do you like the way you talk? Do you like the way you look and all that stuff? Like a lot of people don't know what they're giving off to the world. And that might be a lot of the way you talk and the way your face works. That might be a lot of the problem people have with you. You could be talking with a very mean face mug, but you're the nicest person in the world.
Yeah, resting bitch face is real.
Yeah, exactly. So like I've really started to get back to, since I had this conversation with her, kind of like asking myself, when I get stuck, I ask myself the question, well, why are you stuck? What's causing you to be stuck?
Yeah.
And if like we were saying a little bit, it's just this conversation leads to, that level of help, that level of, either awareness or a realization comes to be just by continuing the conversation. It's funny, when I was with Tom Caravella on his podcast, we were talking about something I like to call, I call it the glorious unknown, but it's the unknown really. And it's about getting into a situation, whether it's a networking event, going out on a date with somebody, going in for an interview, whatever it is. It's this time where you're getting to a situation where you don't know the person on the other side of the table, right? You don't know the conversation that you're going to have with them, whether it's one of those topics. If you can, and you can do a little bit of, pre-work, like looking on their LinkedIn or something like that, or Googling their name, so to speak, it gives you a couple of conversation pieces to bring up like icebreakers. But a lot of people, they're fearful of that unknown because they're like, oh, what if I don't do what I need to do? But like the mission of a conversation is, if you focus it, and this goes back to what I said earlier, if you get away from the outcome, like an interview needs to be going for a job. If you go into that interview purely with trying to make a relationship with the person on the other side of the table, one, that's what the mission should be. So they remember you because of the 10 other people they're interviewing. They want to go towards the person that made them feel good. But if it's in a networking event, you don't know what's going to come out of the conversation. You don't know what's going to, if the mission is go and say, hi, my name's Stefan, I work in manufacturing. And the other person's like, oh, that's funny. Like, I supply equipment to a manufacturer, this, that, and the other. You could find a brand new relationship of a vendor that could supply you better product or lesser cost product or something else. Or in any profession or any world, what can come from those conversations by only wanting to go in and forge a relationship, not I got to go find a new vendor, or I got to get this job, or I want to make sure this girl becomes my girlfriend or my wife or my husband or whatever the situation is. If you go in just working on the relationship side to it, I feel like the world, the sky's the limit. It's forever. It can go as far as it becomes. And even if in that conversation, like you introduce yourself, I introduce myself, and the conversation's done there, now at least I know somebody that's in your profession. So if I ever, maybe in 6 months, had somebody come by me and be like, hey, this person's really struggling, they need some help. It's like, hey, Angie, even if that's the outcome of just getting to know people by name and profession, sometimes there's a lot of value in that.
Oh, so much value. And
too
I
much
think
weight on wanting it now.
Yeah. Well, and I think it just circles back to where we started this, which is being present, right? It's like when you are in those situations and you're meeting people, just be present. You don't have to be the best conversationalist or the wittiest humor, just be present with somebody. And it's amazing how when people feel heard, just heard, and I do this many times. I just listen, but people feel so close after we meet just because I listen to them. And you just hold space for them and listen, and they think it's the best conversation they ever had. Not that I'm not a good conversationalist. I love talking, but a lot of times that's not even what's needed or wanted. It's just being present and holding space for people.
Yeah. I love that. There's way to circle that right back around.
Well, it's at the core of everything, right? Like if we could just be in this moment, there's so much peace in that. Like if we can shut out the what's going to happen later or what just happened, if we can just be in the now, like, it's like that Eckhart. Have you read the Eckhart Tolle book? I'm sure you have. Yeah. It's just all about being in the moment, and there's just magic in that. And I think that's where a lot of people, like you were talking about with people who are depressed, they're inundated with phones and social media and news and this constantly, that they don't ever shut it off and just give themselves the quiet and the space, like you said, to talk and have those questions or listen to what's going to happen. We just want to cloud our universe with noise and this and that and everything else instead of just being here and allowing something to come.
Yeah. And I think as people that have functional tools and things around them like phones and cell phones and wherever you are, like setting up for this podcast, like phones off in the office, phones off on my desk, emails are all off, like making some of those little decisions, like proverbially turning the power off or the Wi-Fi off or something like that, is some of those things I think we need to make sure that we do also. So making the decisions ahead of time when you can control some of those distractions is a huge part of improving and increasing the presence that you have in your life.
Yeah, I love that. Like, as you were saying that, like, yeah, that's like a sign of respect for other people. So why not show that same respect for ourselves? Give yourselves that 10 or 15 minutes in the morning where you shut everything off and you just are fully present for yourself. That's where you can start to see that magic too.
Yes. Yes. And that just sparked a thought in my head that I think people are very much aware that there's other people around them, but they don't give themselves to make the recognition that they also are a person. And that's where like that forging a relationship with you, because you're a person, just like Angie, you're a person. Yeah. We're having a person-to-person conversation right now. You got to do that for yourself too. Like my whole life, I've always been one of those people that always pours out, but I didn't pour in enough. Yeah. And I struggled with it for a while. And it was like, that was my thing that I was challenged with. I was like, I'm always so good to everybody else, but I'm never good to myself. It took me a while to be able to say those words, but I never really recognized why things in my personal life weren't going the way I wanted them to. It's because I never poured into me. Yeah. And I didn't recognize that I'm also that same person. So to your point, where when people, need to get over a depressive state or some kind of situation they're in, food and diet was huge, right? And exercise. I poured into those things for myself and my whole world changed. Yep. Because I gave myself the ability to have a little bit of time with me. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges most people have is they don't recognize themselves as a person. And that's where they don't have that strong enough relationship where they'll instantaneously do something for somebody else. But if they ask themselves to do the same thing, I'll get to it. Yeah. But if I need to move my house, it's one thing. But if you need to move your house, I'll help you first. Yep. Because there's joy in that like reciprocity kind of feeling or doing something nice for somebody else. Yeah. But you're a person too. You got to do something nice for yourself from time to time. Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because now we come all the way back down around to the work balance life thing, which I struggle with because I don't think there, like you said, there ever can be a balance. And if you're trying to get something done, you got to put a lot of energy into certain areas. But I know for myself, I've definitely made, and of course it's easier now that my kids are gone, is I can put a lot more energy into myself, but I realize how much happier I am in doing so. So that would be my biggest advice, just like what you're saying, is find that time to make you the priority, regardless of how busy you are with everything else going on. Having yourself as a priority, at least part of the time, or at least a half hour every morning or an hour while you work out, whatever it is. I think that's just the biggest shift in things that people can do for themselves. So you know what helped me actually in that whole work-life balance thing? Because work can easily take and trump what we do for our personal life, because we always think we have to do that. I don't think it's just an American thing, because outside the country, they don't do that as much. But if I know
It's
there's
almost
a
the
project,
opposite outside the
yeah,
country. It's like all
if I know
personal
there's a
life and a little
project
bit of
going
work.
on, yeah. And what I don't understand is how they still get all the same level of stuff done that we do here. We're definitely doing something wrong here.
Totally. And they think we're crazy. They're like, why the hell do you guys work so hard?
What I've done for myself is if I know there's a project coming and I know it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I will actually frame that out and use my calendar as a reminder that for this period of time, I can't beat myself up if I'm not doing the personal things, because I committed to this much time. And that's the thing. It's like, it's a seesaw effect, but like, it's a very slow moving seesaw. It takes a while for it to come back. And sometimes there could just be some extra weight here that's holding it down there longer. And just give yourself that grace, like you said earlier, to know, hey, in 3 weeks, I'm going to go back to pouring into myself. Unless you live that lifestyle that you can actually do this every single day, if you frame the timing of things, sometimes it's helped me in my life, the way my stuff goes. So hopefully that helps somebody.
Absolutely. Well, and it's like what, I've been going through with all this travel and everything, and I'm trying to eat right and this and that. And I was like, you just got to give yourself grace. There's so much time zones and lack of sleep and stuff that you're confronting, and you want to be present and you want to be doing what you're going there to do. Here's where the grace comes in. As soon as I get home and I can get my routine back in, like I said, tomorrow start 75 hard. Now we go back into discipline and pouring into yourself. And I love that seesaw thing. It's exactly what I've been doing in my life. Like in last 6 months, I've been doing all this, and now we're going to go into this one. And either way is okay, as long as we're being present and understanding nothing is forever. And it's just enjoy what you have going on at that moment in time. And I think that's the biggest cure to depression, is just being present and knowing whatever you're going through, it's just temporary. Sometimes it sucks, but it's just temporary and it will change.
For damn sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's almost like the other visual analogy I have all the time is a pendulum and a clock, like an old grandfather clock. Like you want that thing tick-tocking, because that means it's alive, it's working, it's doing its thing, right? But that pendulum needs to go one way and then it goes back the other way. And that's what keeps the thing moving. If it ever stops, time stops. It's dead. Like you don't want things to be perfectly balanced like that in your world, because it's never going to be that you're alive. It's never going to be that you're experiencing. It's never going to be that things are doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's just knowing that it's over here. It's going to come back. It has to.
Yeah.
So again, it's just going back to recognizing when those moments are happening, and that when you're like, it's almost like when you're in a good mood, you're going to be in a bad mood too. It's going to happen. Right?
Yeah. There's going to be the crash, like a sugar high.
Exactly. But when you're in a bad mood, know that that's going to come back. But if it ever stops, you're dead, and you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. I love that. That's great advice, because like for me, I can think with the theory of like, if you're not doing better, your law of universe, you're going to do worse. So we have to continually keep moving up. But, we could be doing all the right things and still have bad stuff happen. And I think that's like sort of, I don't know if it's a misnomer, but I know even for myself and what we tell our graduates, it's like you could be doing all the right things, but bad shit can still happen. And it's realizing, like we just talked about, that it's temporary and it can go back up again. You don't just give up because something really bad happened and just succumb and give in and throw away all the good stuff that you've worked for, you tried hard for, or you've earned over life hitting you in the face. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or you did a bad thing. Life is just hard.
Yeah. Truth.
Yeah.
As long as you get up every day and you're breathing, it's a good day.
Awesome. So what does your daily routine look like? Do you meditate? I know you work out a lot. What is
workout's pretty big. I've been trying to keep 2 a days going, but it's not as easy right now, which is again a bullshit excuse because I'm making excuses for it. So I know. Food is pretty big for me. I've recognized the truth and the value of food. So I about 12 years ago, found out I have gout, which sucks. That really limits you in terms of some of the types of foods you can eat. Like for me, beef is a big part of it. Lobster, crab, spinach.
Wait, you can or can't have those?
Can't eat those.
I would be devastated. Beef and lobster are like my favorite two foods.
I know. I used to be able to, and I can make a pretty mean steak. I just can't eat it anymore. But I'd be more than happy to cook it for anybody too. If
really?
eat it.
Oh, goodness, you are a much better person than me.
But I also started to realize my sister went to an internist, and she went to a doctor who basically did what was called like a leaky gut test, or I think it's LSAT testing or something like that.
Yeah.
But you take your blood and you test it against 250 different types of foods and minerals and enzymes and all that. And what you're recognizing is, of the food that you've been eating for the last, whatever, 6 months or so, they test your blood against it to see whether you have any intolerances. And you can either have like major intolerances or minor intolerances. And when you step back and you think about leaky gut, it all has to do with your small intestines. Okay. And your small intestines has one layer of cell membrane around it that if there's a break in that cellular membrane and things get past it, your body treats it like an autoimmune situation. So forever, anybody who's ever been, they got eczema or they got a bloating feeling or an arthritic response towards something or anything after they eat that they're like, I just don't feel so good. It has nothing to do with your body's fucked up. It has everything to do with your body has an intolerance towards a specific type of food. And you got to allow yourself to heal to see whether you actually shouldn't be eating that food, or right now you just can't be eating that food. So in this testing, what I did is you take all these foods that are on this list and you stop eating them for 6 months or 3 months, depending on what's major or minor. Then you get on a vitamin regimen to basically try to heal your cellular membrane around your small intestines. And then you bring this food back in and see whether it still has issues for you. Like on my major list was carrots and spring onions. Now I don't have any problems with it anymore. But at that time, I would get like maybe an arthritic type response towards that. The other things are baker's yeast, brewer's yeast. Man, my list was MSG, organophosphates. So, I mean, this went down this snowball effect. So organophosphates is basically Roundup at the end of the day. So you think where Roundup is used, right? It's used on all the grains and it's used in all the plants and all that stuff around the world.
Yeah.
So if you step back, go clean eating, truly organic, not just the last 30 days kind of philosophy that some companies get away with these days, but know where your source of food's coming from, that's great. But now if you go to a restaurant, you're like, you know what? I'm going to eat chicken today, or I'm going to eat steak today. Well, what did that animal eat and where did it come from? Because that is how far it can go in terms of whether it affects you or not.
Oh, and that is the biggest challenge of eating out is you don't know where it's coming from or what they're using, what oil they're cooking it in, which is a big one, that bad oil.
Exactly. So I started to really get an understanding of food and how much the little variables of food make a huge impact in your personal life. So I did all that work. I found out all the things that I have some issues with. And what I've noticed now is like when I drink a little bit more beer, like if I have 2 or 3 beers, I'm usually good. But a couple more than that, I wake up in the morning and my hands are really tight. Now that's also partially a gout response, but it's all part of the same thing. And bread, I get a little bit more bloating feeling from bread. Like really processed white breads versus like whole grains and multi-grain kind of breads. So I've done a lot of work on the food side. So that's a pretty big, regimen in my life. And I know when I'm making a bad decision, I know how to fix it, right? There's certainly some good soul foods that I still like to eat, but I just don't do a lot of it.
Yeah.
So workout's good. Food's pretty good. Reading's it's become a big thing for me since 75 Hard. Before 75 Hard, I got to tell you, I barely read a lot of books in my life.
Yeah.
But there's
only if I had to.
Yeah,
I read like those cheesy vampire novels, like they were just trash, but that's about all I read.
And I'm sure you learned a thing or two from there for sure. There's always something to be learned.
Maybe not for the best, but yes.
I didn't say best.
They set a high standard when it comes to a guy, let me tell you.
I've been following a lot of people that are doing cold plunges. I kind of want to get started in those, so I was going to try.
I got
that.
One. You can come visit and get in there. It sucks. Okay. It really sucks, but I know how good it is.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I've done a few of those when I was out, like some of the winter trips I've done. There were places that had cold plunges, or I would just sit in the snow for 30 seconds before going back in the hot tub. Theory wise, which isn't exactly the same thing, but I've done a few tests to see that it sucks, but it's got a lot of value to it. Meditation and vision planning is something I do here. I don't do it as much on paper. Meditation is something I have not gotten into, and I don't know where my block is for it, but I want to get involved in it more. And I need to probably sit with somebody who can give me really a good rundown of how to use it right.
Yeah, it's how to shut that monkey mind off. I mean, it's just a muscle. There is no anything except practice. Set your timer 4 minutes every day. Oh, fuck, I actually got through 4 minutes. Let's up it to 5. I mean, there is magic, but I think it's just a muscle that needs to be built, and you just got to do it by repetition over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah, that's an area I want to bring in my world. I remember back in finance, we had to do this thing. They had this saying called witty whiffy, which is, what do you want for yourself? And they would make you sit for your, I mean, they didn't make you, but they asked you for 5 minutes, sit by yourself and just start writing down all the things you want to do with your life. I barely made it like 2.5 minutes. My mind was in every different nook and cranny of the world, my own issues, my laundry that had to get done. Like my mind goes too scatterbrained at times. I feel like you're right. It's 100% an exercise that you need to keep getting better at.
Yeah. Even if you just did 2 minutes every day and just started to build that muscle. I mean, I'm talking like an expert. I've been doing it for many years, but I still struggle with it. Like I like a guided meditation because I'm like, oh, at least I can listen to that voice and my mind doesn't go in all these other places. I can find my breath. I can like do these things as telling me to do and shut off all that other stuff.
Have you used Headspace or Calm before the apps?
Oh yeah. I did Calm for many years. I did another one. I forget what it was, but I've done a lot of them. I'll actually, after this, I'll send you this really cool one that I've been doing recently.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to. It's an area I know that I gained some value in, and I need to start incorporating it into my world.
Yeah. You know, where I found it the easiest for me to do is walking. Just shut everything off, shut the phones off, and just doing like walking meditation, being out and looking around, shut off all that noise where I could be totally present. And that was like my best kind of meditation for a long time.
That's not a bad idea, because I usually, interestingly, when I go and walk, because one of my favorite walks to do is just throw on the 40-pound vest and go find all the hills that live around where I live around.
Yeah.
I'll throw a podcast on, and usually it's whatever the next one is in line with some of the ones we're listening to, or I'll go back and listen to an old one. But usually on those walks, listening to the podcasts, my mind starts going down these paths of, this is what I need to do for this person in my world. And this is the conversation. Like my creativity really flies when I'm walking, I feel like. So I'm going to give that a shot. That might be the channel. You might've just solved it for me.
Yeah, that's how I did it for me. Cause I was the same. This is my chance to audible. Cause I'd listen to books. I like listening to books, podcasts. Sometimes I just want to hear music, but when I shut it all off and was just present in nature, then I was like, holy shit, this is it. This is magic for me.
Okay. That might be the move.
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
Okay, good. Try it out. Let me know how it goes.
I will. I'll have to let you know how it goes. That'd be exciting.
Awesome. Cool. Well, is there anything new and exciting on your horizons? Anything coming up you want to share with our listeners? Besides your big move, I mean, that's about as big as it gets.
That's pretty big, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So we're going from a 20,000 square foot to a 50,000 square foot facility down there. And I mean, while I've learned a lot about how to move a business with my team, who I'm really proud of, and they've done such a good job, I've learned so much about human psyche in the last 6 months. The thought process about leaving, the connections people have to local friends, and those people that are a little bit more adventurous and they seek this new opportunity for what it is. And man, the people side of life is the most, how do I want to phrase this? It's the most challenging and rewarding thing I think as a leader you can possibly ask for.
Yeah.
There's so much to gain if you just give yourself the opportunity to learn about your people. And there's so much to gain if you actually learn about your people, what's going on in their personal lives, who's their spouse, who's their dog, who's their best friend growing up. Like if you take the time to get to know people on that level, man, I've built some incredible friendships here that when I was growing up through the business and my dad was running the show and so forth, and a bunch of, the guys were all mostly in their 40s and 50s and stuff. And I was, late 20s. I didn't have a lot of people around here that were in and around my age, let's just say, and I wasn't behaving this way. But now, like growing up, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to be able to run this place if I can't be friends with some of the people I work with. And now I've got a group of people here, like, once a month minimum, we're all going out and having like a guys' night or a team night or an office night or something like that. But also throughout the month, like some of us are going hiking together, some of us are doing activities together, and it's just built this level of bonding and friendship with guys and gals that are working together with me, that they know what effort I'm going to put into everything. I know where their effort comes from. I know who their motivations are outside of home. Like when you can walk up to somebody and be like, hey, how's Dino feeling? I know he was sick last week, the dog, right? People don't ask those questions to their employees regularly.
Right.
Like if you take the time to get to know people, there's so much value in it for a business owner. It's an incredible thing. Like if you don't know at least half your team spouse's names and some of the things that are going on in your family or their families, you're not doing it right. really not doing it right. If you only know one or two guys that are your direct reports, like, I mean, unless you're running 1,000-person company, but even then you should put an effort into it. But like, there's so much value in that. So I've learned a lot about that over the last 6 months. But now my biggest thing is just making sure the ship doesn't run ashore during the process of moving the business to a new state, and, keeping everything kind of in line, and trying to keep the family in line and all that stuff back here too, that they're not, everybody's gonna be sad when I leave and all that stuff, but doesn't mean I'm gone. Doesn't mean I'm gone forever. It just means I'm, an hour and a half flight away.
Yeah. And you don't mind traveling, so it's all good. They're going to get sick of you. You're going to visit so often. Well,
yeah, I mean, other than that, there's nothing major new going on. I mean, there's been some interesting woodshop projects that I got coming through that I got to start working towards and bidding on, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a big testimony of you as a leader that you've gotten that team to make that move with you. I know for myself, there's been some things throughout my time as a leader where people are like, I can't believe you got your whole team to do that. But I think it's because of those reasons. When it's not this cold corporate world and it is more personal, people believe in the purpose, they will go with you. If you got to go, they're going to go with you. And so I think that's a huge testimony to what a great leader you are.
Thank you. It's a true honor when I get to put my head down at the end of the night and know people are coming because they want to.
Yeah, I love that.
It's awesome. Truly.
Awesome. So if our listeners want to find you, do you want them finding you?
Sure. Okay. So you can find me pretty much on, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. For me professionally, LinkedIn has been a lot more the major company side of the world, because we're much more technical, and then woodshop and just personal stuff I do is all through Instagram. And you can just look me up based on my name, Stefan, Stefan, and then my last name, Joens, Joens.
No, I'm kidding.
Everybody will do it.
Yeah. Joens. Come on, everybody.
Yeah, it's I'm big into motivation. I love problem solving. I'm a sucker for a good quote. And I don't just put them up just to be like, oh, this is a cool quote. It's amazing. So on my office door, I have a quote every single day. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but somewhere throughout the day, somebody's going to come in and have a situation going on in their life. And I just point at it. And they're like, oh, shit, that's perfect. It just hits them. Like, people have come by, they've grabbed photos, printed out, put it on their workstations and so forth. And it's not the cheesy quotes of, teamwork with birds on a ledge or something like that, saying together we're better. Like, I don't put those kinds of cheesy ass things up there, but things people need to think about a little bit, and it gets you thinking.
How do you come up with this? Like, it just comes to you every morning? You're like, oh, that's a good quote? Or how do you make this decision?
So if I'm scrambling to find a quote, there's some places on Instagram that I usually go to, like 6 a.m. motivator, motivator success, motivation success. There's a bunch of things throughout Instagram that I find, but usually it's other people have posted something that looks to be of an interesting quote, and I just screenshot it and save it for some time down the road. Or I'll go back to, because in my phone, I've kept screenshots of every single one of the photos that I've taken on the board or made on the board. So, life is a good educator and a good leader is about repeating old things to new people, not new things to all people all the time. Because there's a lot of value in stuff you taught a year or two ago to somebody that you got a new group of people around you, a new audience, a new something. Bring back the stuff that was really, really powerful 2, 3, 4 years ago, because that can mean a lot for your new audience. It's something that might never have known.
Yeah. Well, and there's something about repetition. Don't you have to hear something? I think it's like 5 or 7 times before it actually sets in. Yeah, so there's that. And then there's also, you're just, the second time you hear it, you're in a different place in your life than the first time you heard it. And it maybe applies a little differently than the first time, second time, or even third time you heard it.
Yeah. People know I love it so much that now people will also send me quotes. Like, oh, this is a good one for the board. So, when I'm totally running dry and the tank's empty, I usually have something I can fall back on. So
nice. Okay, good. Well, I'll start sending you some really good ones when I come across. I got a great one at home I'm going to send you. So
bring it. I love it. Awesome. One of my favorites, and this is one of those truly simple ones, but I'm one of those people that likes to think deeper than what the words say. One of my favorites is to be is to do. Super simple. So people are like, oh, what does that mean? It's like, well, if you want to go become the manager at your department, within the company that you work for. Well, go start doing the things that it's going to take to become the manager in that role. You want to go become a 10-pound less person, go start doing the things that you want to do to become 10 pounds less. Like the simplicity of that, but the ability to sit with somebody and just break it all down is huge.
I love that. Yeah. I've always done that. Like be, do, have. Like if you want to have this, you reverse engineer it and be that person, do those things. And then ultimately you will have what you want. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you for coming on the show. It's been an awesome conversation. I knew it would be.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, be here with your audience. I hope we've left a little bit of value for everybody that's listening. I'm super proud of you too, for all the things you're doing, the mission that you're on, the level of help you're giving people that are probably in one of the dire straits of life and they need the most level of help. But what they really need is they just need someone to lean on. They need someone with a big heart. They need someone with a vision. And they need someone like yourself. So I'm super proud of you. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much. And if you need anything, I'm always here.
Appreciate it, Ange.